Ayotunde Balogun. Hello and welcome tonight. President Bola Tinubu swears in General Christopher Musa as new Minister of Defense, as the new minister assures Nigerians of improved security very soon. Defense headquarters says it is still investigating allegations of troops withdrawal before the attack on the government comprehensive girls secondary school, Maga, in Kebbi State. Federal government pledges support for Imo's multi-million-dollar investment drive as state hosts 2025 Economic Summit in Owerri. And the leaders of the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda sign a peace agreement alongside U.S. President Donald Trump in Washington.
And on business, strong demand pushes one-year Treasury bill yield to 17.5% as DMO raises 709 billion naira.
And on sports news tonight, Super Eagles captain William Troost-Ekong retires from international football after 83 caps and playing 5 major tournaments for Nigeria.
And from the nation's capital, the Policy and Legal Advocacy Center and its partners back the enactment of the Special Seats Bill, which seeks to improve women's participation in politics.
President Bola Tinubu has sworn in General Christopher Musa as the Minister of Defense, marking a significant move in the ongoing restructuring of Nigeria's security architecture. The brief ceremony was held in the President's office at the Presidential Villa. Speaking shortly after the event, General Musa told State House correspondents that his top priority is to firmly reposition the defense sector, assuring Nigerians that tangible results will be visible soon. Our State House correspondent, Larry Lasisi, now reports.
A day after he faced the Senate for hours, the former Chief of Defense Staff, retired General Christopher Musa, is accompanied by his wife to the State House for his swearing in as the Minister of Defense. It's a short ceremony, and present is the Senate President, the Senate Leader, the Chief of Defense Staff, the National Security Advisor, the Minister of Information and National Orientation, the Catholic Bishop of Sokoto, and other top officials. Once President Bola Tinubu arrives, the ceremony commences. With the President watching intently, the Minister-designate takes his oath of office.
I, General Christopher Musa.
With that, the short ceremony comes to an end. Speaking afterwards, the minister is clear on his first steps.
My immediate priority is to make sure that defense takes its place fully in the country. The synergy between the armed forces, and other security agencies, and all Nigerians being carried along, as we have always said, that security is everybody's responsibility. It is that synergy that we need to build on and work on it, and that's what we're going to. And I can assure you, within the shortest possible time, Nigerians will see results.
He also states the charge from the president.
We must make sure that Nigeria is secured. Nigerians should go back and sleep with their eyes closed, go back to their farms, schools open without being molested, everyone being carried together to make sure that Nigeria continues to grow in line with the renewed program of the Mr. President.
The Catholic Bishop of Sokoto, who represented the Sultan of Sokoto at the event, speaks on expectation for the new minister.
Rain, thunder, sunshine, whatever it takes to get this mess under control. These guys need to be flushed out. Normalcy needs to return to our country. Laughter and joy has to come back to Nigeria within the shortest time possible.
Earlier in the day, President Tinubu received letters of credence from 17 ambassadors and 4 high commissioners. He assured the global community that Nigeria remains fully committed to promoting peace, harmony, and prosperity across borders by strengthening partnerships to resolve emerging challenges.
The global community faces evolving challenges, security threats, climate pressures, economic instability, and humanitarian issues, Nigerians stand ready to work closely with your governments to promote peace, stability, and prosperity.
The envoys assured the president of their readiness to help deepen relations among their countries and Nigeria. The envoys include those from Japan, the Republic of Chad, Indonesia, Mauritania, Thailand, among others. From the presidential villa, Lanre Lasisi, Channels Television News.
The National Security Advisor, Nuhu Ribadu, has warned that any individual or group seeking to exploit communities, spread terror, or undermine national security will face decisive action from security agencies. Mr. Ribadu issued the warning in Abuja during a dialogue on the whole-of-society approach to preventing violence and conflict in northern Nigeria, organized by the National Peace Committee led by Bishop Matthew Kuka.
The prevention of violence and conflict in northern Nigeria is the reason for this dialogue organized by the National Peace Committee.
Communities, traditional institutions, religious leaders.
The conversation begins with the National Security Advisor reading the Round Act to non-state actors, just as he insists that peace cannot be achieved without the collaboration of communities, traditional rulers, women, youth, civil society, and development partners.
Lasting peace cannot be achieved by security agencies alone. It requires the active engagement and commitment of communities. Traditional and religious leaders, civil society, youth groups, women's organizations, the private sector, development partners, and international organizations. This is the essence of the whole of society approach.
Participants at the dialogue agree that the nation's security challenges can no longer be tackled through a purely kinetic guns and uniforms approach.
The truth of the matter is, and I've always been an apostle of the firm belief that arms are not going to solve our problems. There is a call for communities to arm themselves, but this is not going to last forever. And what will happen to our country is, when peace returns, where will those arms go to? So there's a false sense of security that we can defend ourselves, but this is not going to be possible.
So coming together is very important. Talking to one another is very important, but we must do so with all honesty, sincerity, and with the fear of God, knowing that we don't see God, but God sees us and sees our actions.
The European Union, on its part, is promising to support Nigeria's approach to the fight against insecurity, as the Union believes that non-state actors seeking to exploit communities or undermine national unity will face decisive and coordinated action.
Most recently, violent attacks, including killings and kidnappings, have been widely reported, mostly in the north of the country, including the Middle Belt, and this has raised grave concern nationally and internationally. First and foremost, the EU stands in solidarity with all victims of violence and abductions.
The resolution of this dialogue is that truth builds peace, while silence sustains violence. But with the whole of the society approach, lasting peace is still a possibility across northern Nigeria.
Meanwhile, the Defense Headquarters says it is still investigating allegations that troops were withdrawn before the attack on Government Comprehensive Girls Secondary School, Maga, in Danko-Wasagu local government area of Kebbi State. Now, speaking at a bi-weekly media briefing in Abuja, the Director of Defense Media Operations, Major General Michael Onoja, stated that the investigation aims to identify any lapses and sanction anyone found to have compromised the security situation. The briefing, Major General Onoja's first since the new Chief of Defense Staff assumed office, provided updates from various theaters of operation.
The Armed Forces solicits continuous sharing of credible information with troops to enhance our operations. It is only through credible information that necessary action and responses can be undertaken to ensure that all our threats are controlled. We also continue to solicit the support of all Nigerians in this regard. The Armed Forces of Nigeria is dedicated to continuing to operate within the ambit of the law. We convey our assurances that we are enhancing our operational tempo in the light of the renewed security threats until peace is returned to all troubled areas of the country. The Armed Forces also wishes to inform all Nigerians that we are emplacing all necessary measures, systems and activities humanly possible to ensure that the remaining students recently abducted are rescued and returned to their families unhurt.
The Kaduna state government says it has achieved significant success in combating crime in the state through non-violent methods. The Deputy Governor, Mrs. Hadiza Balarabe, made the remark in Abuja at a conference organized by the National Human Rights Commission on the use of proportional force and the respect for human dignity. Our correspondent, Emanuela Ekele, tells us more.
This conference, organized by the National Human Rights Commission, focuses on proportional force and respect for human dignity, with key experts in security and governance space in attendance. The Executive Secretary of the National Human Rights Commission, Mr. Tonyo Juku, advocates that security operatives must be guided by both constitutional and international standards in the fight against crime and criminality.
This dialogue seeks to examine how the principles of proportionality and respect for human dignity, which is anchored on international and national legal frameworks, can be more effectively integrated into the daily practices of our security and law enforcement architecture.
In view of the present security realities, more conversations center on the complexity of ensuring the balance of proportional force by law enforcement agencies and the preservation of the dignity of human rights.
Our officers must confront sophisticated criminal networks, dangerous substances, and volatile environments. Yet we are constantly reminded that every action must reflect respect for the rule of law and the rights of every Nigerian, including suspects and vulnerable individuals battling addiction.
For the Kaduna state government, there are modalities used by the state to tackle banditry.
The state government, under my leadership, has established this peace dialogue group with the mandate to employ community-based engagement involving citizens, bandits, traditional and religious leaders, and government to address the incessant violent attacks, banditry, and kidnap for ransom in these areas. The approach recorded tremendous successes, and these areas are now enjoying relative peace. This approach has watered down the necessity of using force to combat insurgency and banditry in the state. Force is only employed when it is necessary.
The recommendation of the dialogue is that proportional force and respect for human dignity must be anchored on the bridge that connects principles of practice, and Nigeria can build a security system that is both effective and human rights compliant.
In part two, after the break, federal government pledges support for Imo's multi-million-dollar investment drive as state hosts 2025 Economic Summit in Owerri. Please stay with us. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. President Bola Tinubu swears in General Christopher Musa as new Minister of Defense, as the new minister assures Nigerians of improved security very soon. Defense headquarters says it is still investigating allegations of troops withdrawal before the attack on the government comprehensive girls secondary school Maga in Kebbi State. Federal government pledges support for Imo's multi-million-dollar investment drive as state hosts 2025 Economic Summit in Owerri. And leaders of the DR Congo and Rwanda signed a peace agreement alongside U.S. President Donald Trump in Washington. The federal government has expressed its readiness to partner with the Imo state government in its renewed drive to build a multi-million-dollar investment-led economy focused on digital innovation, energy, gas, and agriculture. President Bola Tinubu, represented by Vice President Kashim Shettima, made the pledge at the 2025 Imo Economic Summit held in Owerri, the state capital. The high-level summit attracted a distinguished gathering of global investors, seasoned economists, diplomats, and senior government officials from both within and outside Africa. Our correspondent, Eitokwe Kute, reports.
I'd like to say that those who have gathered...
The 2025 Imo Economic Summit, currently underway in Owerri, the Imo State capital, has drawn major actors in finance, governance, technology, and global policy, signaling renewed investor confidence in the state's economic agenda. With the presence of Vice President Kashim Shettima, Liberian President Joseph Boakai, former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, Prime Ministers of Sao Tome and Principe and Mauritius, as well as Africa's richest man Aliko Dangote, alongside CEOs of leading banks and multinational corporations, the summit is assuming the stature of a premier investment forum on the African continent. Imo State Governor Hope Uzodinma sets the tone in his opening remarks, declaring that after years of sustained infrastructural development, Imo State is now fully positioned for large-scale investment and industrial expansion.
Together, we can trigger the rise of a new industrialized Imo State and make her one of the most industrialized in the country as well. We have everything it takes to make this vision happen. We are now inviting you to build the future with us, which is a new industrialized Imo. Imo State is no longer on the rise. Imo has risen.
Speeches from global and national economic leaders echo strong confidence in Imo's ambition to drive growth in digital technology, energy transition, gas industrialization, and modern agriculture, areas projected to unlock billions in economic value.
Imo State has one of the most vibrant youth population in Nigeria. Harnessing this demographic advantage by supporting innovation hubs, technology work, incubation centers, and research institutions will give Imo an edge in the global economy.
I am asking many people, what kind of a future do you want? What kind of future do you want to leave to your sons and daughters, succeeding generations? Therefore, not only leaders, political leaders, but civil society, business leaders, you have moral duties and political duties to make sure that our succeeding generations will live without any fear of climate change issues.
Nigeria's economy is moving, and it's moving in the right direction, but our target is not 4%. The target set for us is 7% per annum, because that's more than double the rate of population growth. It means we'll be lifting millions of Nigerians out of poverty. And we need scaling of private and public investment to get there. And that's why we are gathered here today.
Nigeria's great days lie ahead of it. The Imo State's great days lie ahead of it. And I think the great days of the historic friendship, partnership, love affair between Britain and Nigeria also lie ahead of us.
We cannot actually build our own economy by ourselves. But with the current policies that we have, with people see that we're investing, they are going to join us and we will come here and invest. We will be one of your biggest investors in Imo. So please tell me which area you want us to invest, we'll invest.
My many years of experience in advising investors convinced me that the Orashi River integrated project can be an investor's paradise.
Representing the President, Vice President Kashim Shettima reaffirms the federal government's commitment to supporting Imo State and all federating units in creating economic opportunities and improving the living standards of Nigerians, irrespective of region or background.
Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I reaffirm the full support of the federal government of Nigeria under the able leadership of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, to support you, Governor Hope Uzodinma, and the government and people of Imo State.
As the first day of the Imo Economic Summit comes to a close, discussions are centered around prosperity, billion-dollar investment, and economic future of Imo people. However, what will be more important after this summit is how this directly impacts the life of Imo citizens. Channels Television News.
In legal news, a dispute among lawyers in court today on the authorized legal representation of Nest Oil Limited and Conde Energy Limited stalled proceedings in the appeal filed by FBN Quest Merchant Bank Limited and First Trustees Limited against the ruling of the Federal High Court, Lagos. At the Court of Appeal, Lagos Division, Justice Yargata Nimpa, who presided over the three-member panel, directed parties to respond to the applications challenging legal representation before the next adjourned date on January the 15th, 2026. Our parties had gathered at the Court of Appeal Lagos Division for the hearing challenging the November the 20th, 2025 ruling of Justice Daniel Osiago, who vacated the Mareva injunction that had frozen the assets of Nest Oil and those of their directors over an alleged $1 billion debt claim. Confusion, however, broke out after the court directed counsel to announce their appearances. The senior advocates of Nigeria, Babajide Koku and Kunle Ogumba, announced appearance for FBN Quest and First Trustees Limited. The problem arose when senior advocate of Nigeria, Ayola Ajayi, announced appearance for Nest Oil Limited, while senior advocate of Nigeria, Ayo Olorunfemi, announced appearance for Conde Energy Limited. Their representation was immediately challenged by the senior advocates of Nigeria, Moise Banire and Wale Olanipekun, who also announced appearance for Nest Oil and Conde, having represented both firms at the lower court. Addressing the situation, Presiding Justice Nimpa held that the issue of legal representation must be resolved first before the court could proceed to hear other applications. So let's now head to the nation's capital, and Gloria Umezoke is now standing by to give us the latest from our Abuja studios. Hello, Gloria. Over to you.
Thank you, Ayo. Well, here in Abuja, the Policy and Legal Advocacy Center, along with its development partners, believe that the handling of the Special Seats Bill will be a key factor in shaping the legacy of the 10th National Assembly. Speaking collectively at a stakeholder roundtable in Abuja, the forum voiced strong support for the bill, which is expected to enhance political, social, and financial inclusion for women across the country. Our correspondent, Dele Omoyeni, reports.
This is the last major advocacy event to push for the Special Seats Bill before the National Assembly votes on constitutional amendments this month. The Policy and Legal Advocacy Center is organizing this advocacy to provide key legislative updates on the final stretch in the journey of the bill.
As Nigerians who have a National Assembly, the National Assembly will respond to our demand, citizens' demand, that women be given the representation and presence in governance as they demand. It's not too much to ask, and I think perhaps it's actually not enough.
The Special Seats Bill for women represents not just a legislative proposal, it embodies our collective commitment to ensuring that women have a rightful place in decision-making processes at all levels of governance.
The bill is also expected to be considered by state houses of assembly, and development partners believe there is no better time to ensure the passage of the bill.
Please be reassured that on the part of the European Union, we are keenly following this process and that we will continue to collaborate and support all those who are lending their voices at this critical time. The active participation of women at all levels of decision-making and politics is essential to the achievement of equality, sustainable development, peace, and democracy.
It's not a good look. It's not good for political life in Nigeria. It's not good for the economy. It's not good for Nigeria's international reputation. Nigeria is almost at the bottom of the gender equality index. In fact, Nigeria's loss is the international community's gain, because we have wonderful people like Amina J. Mohammed and Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala heading up other international bodies.
Now, stakeholder engagements and roundtables are critical for the special seats bill. However, many Nigerians have canvassed that the movers lobby lawmakers on a one-on-one basis to ensure that when voting begins this December for that critical bill, lawmakers can vote in favor of that legislation. Daily Amoyen, Channels Television News.
And over to the health sector, where the coordinating minister, Professor Mohammed Pate, has called on the European Union to take a leading role in the global fight against HIV, tuberculosis and malaria, especially as other major powers step back from this responsibility. He made the appeal while delivering his keynote address on behalf of African health ministers before the International Development Committee of the European Parliament in Brussels, Belgium. Professor Pate highlighted the historic progress achieved over the past decades through global solidarity and noted that Nigeria's health sector, under the leadership of President Bola Tinubu, is taking proactive steps in this fight.
The coordinating Minister of Health and Social Welfare, Professor Mohammed Pate, arrives the European Union Parliament headquarters in Brussels, Belgium, for an engagement with EU commissioners, parliamentarians and global health partners. The high-level meeting is centered on rallying support for aid in the global fight against HIV, tuberculosis and malaria. Delivering his keynote address on behalf of health ministers, Professor Pate urged the European leaders to step up their support.
The question before us is not only how much Europe should contribute. I believe that we all win if we invest in taking care of our basic humanity. And I believe history will remember this moment. We will all remember Johannesburg and what transpired. And we will also remember the conversations taking place here in Brussels. And we would be able to remember over time where the world walked away from its progress and the success is achieved when victory was nearly at hand. So I plead that we choose courage, we choose partnership, and we choose to finish what we started.
While responding to questions from members of the parliament, Professor Pate highlighted efforts by the Nigerian government to escalate domestic funding.
Vaccine development pathway for Nigeria, 80 billion euros, which is very valuable, while reproductive health is also another aspect which is important in terms of fertility, demographic dynamics in Nigeria, given where we are. We are also seeing through EIB, 100 million investment with the Bank of Industry, 50 million for agri, 50 million for pharmaceuticals. So it's a relationship that in a way brings private capital and development capital from Europe and innovations and entrepreneurship to catalyze growth in our market as we get into the manufacturing part. That will create jobs, that will create economic value, it will create health commodities and gets on a part of sustainability. And I believe in the long run, if we go that route, strategically also is good for economic stability, social stability, because we will prosper and Europe will prosper.
With negotiations ongoing, the priority at this meeting is to prevent funding gaps that could jeopardize decades of progress in the fight against HIV, tuberculosis and malaria, illnesses that still claim millions of lives globally every year. Victoria Longjohn, Channels Television News.
Still ahead on the news at 10, demand pushes one-year Treasury bill yield to 17.5% as DMO raises 709 billion naira. That's in business news. Let's join us again.
Welcome back. President Bola Tinubu has forwarded to the Senate a request for the confirmation of 65 ambassadorial nominees, including 34 career ambassadors and 31 non-career ambassadors and high commissioners. The request letter was read on the Senate floor by the Senate President, Godswill Akpabio. The list of non-career nominees includes several prominent personalities, such as former chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, former Minister of Aviation, Femi Fani-Kayode, former Abia State Governor, Okezie Ikpeazu, and former presidential aide, Reno Mokri, and former Enugu State Governor, Ifeanyi Ugwuanyi, among others. Our National Assembly correspondent, Gloria Emezoke, tells us more.
The President of the Senate leads lawmakers into the final day of plenary for the week, commencing with a correspondence from President Bola Tinubu.
Anambra State.
2 separate letters containing a list of 65 ambassadorial nominees were read by the Senate President.
For Abia State, we have Ambassador Mwabiola Ezenwa Chukwuemeka. For Adamawa State, we have Besto Maimuna Ibrahim. Edo State again, we have Wasa Shegun Ige. These 34 nominees are hereby referred to the Committee on Foreign Affairs to report back to the Senate within the next 1 week.
The second letter emerges comprising 31 non-career ambassadors and high commissioners.
I'm pleased to present for confirmation by the Senate the underlisted 31 this time. The other one was 34. Adamawa State, Senator Grace Bent.
The notable names for non-career ambassadors include former INEC chairman Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, former Governor Okezie Ikpeazu, Senator Ita Enang, former Chief of Defense Staff General Bello Dambazao, among others.
For Cross River State, it's a known name. We have Vice Admiral Ibas Ibogaite. For Delta State, we have Mr. Reno Omokri. For Equities State, we have Mrs. Erelu Angela Adebayo. For Lagos State, we have Olufemi Pedro. For Nasarawa State, we have Barrister Mohammed Obandoma Aliu. For Ondo State, we have very distinguished Senator Jimo Ibrahim. For Ondo State again, we have Ambassador Joseph Shola Iji. For Osun State, we have Femi Fani-Kayode.
Separately, the Senate considered a bill to reduce extreme poverty and strengthen social protection systems through a social welfare service across the country.
This bill mandates the maintenance of a register of beneficiaries and graduates, ensuring transparency and helping track the long-term impact on the programs.
What this bill seeks to do is to give the legal mandate to get the data and then devise ways and means of bringing Nigerians out of poverty.
There is no dissenting voice as the bill scales second reading.
Second reading taken.
The upper chamber equally passed another bill to amend the Banks and Other Financial Institutions Act.
We are confronted with a regulatory gap. So this bill seeks to correct that gap and responsibly address the vulnerabilities that may arise.
There's huge discrepancy with regards to payments on transactions carried out on Facebook in Nigeria as against their counterparts in the United States.
I can tell you for free, Mr. President, there are some online transactions that are even bigger than our banks here in Nigeria. What this bill tends to achieve is an holistic provision for this online transaction.
The bill has been referred to the Senate Committee on Banking, Insurance and Other Financial Institutions for further legislative action. From the National Assembly, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar has criticized President Bola Tinubu's nomination of Professor Mahmoud Yakubu for an ambassadorial post. In a statement posted on his X handle, Mr. Abubakar said that if he were president of Nigeria, he would never nominate a past INEC chairman as an ambassador. President Bola Tinubu has submitted Professor Yakubu's name as part of a list of 32 ambassadorial nominees to the Senate for confirmation on November the 29th. According to Mr. Abubakar, however, appointing the ex-INEC chairman to a diplomatic position would raise serious concerns and risk being interpreted as a reward for the conduct of one of Nigeria's most disputed elections. The statement reads in part, quote, "It presents terrible optics for an administration already struggling with credibility. It sends the wrong message to the current at INEC Nigeria leadership that partisan, compromised or poorly executed elections may ultimately be rewarded. And most importantly, it is morally indefensible for an umpire at the center of one of the most disputed elections in our history to become a beneficiary of its outcome." End quote. And the former vice president also notes that such a nomination undermines efforts to strengthen Nigeria's democracy and restore public trust in institutions. It was a night of unity, reflection and celebration in Calabar, the crossover state capital, as Governor Basi Otu hosted a historic award ceremony honoring all 4 former governors of the state. The event, which also featured the symbolic lighting of the state's ceremonial Christmas tree, officially marked the start of 32 days of Carnival Calabar festivities.
As part of activities marking the 20th anniversary of Carnival Calabar, an event which has been tagged Africa's biggest street party, the Cross River State government says it's planning to make it a memorable experience. To kick off the 32-day festivities, all past governors of the state have been honored in a duo event at the Millennium Park in the capital, Calabar, which unfolds under a sky filled with color and unity. The presence of all 4 former governors, Clement Avery, Donald Duke, Senator Lee Elimoke, and Professor Ben Ayade, spices up the occasion.
I opened the doors after the creation of this state, and you've done what Winston Churchill used to say. He said, "The farther back you look, the farther forward you can see." I think that having done this, you're going to see a lot further.
It's daunting, it is onerous, but you know, the beauty of it is it brings all our peoples, diverse as we are, to one unique event where we celebrate ourselves.
The emotional moment transitions into the presentation of Legacy Service Awards. Each past governor is honored for their distinct contributions, from pioneering tourism and infrastructure to strengthening institutions and driving social development.
Congratulations to you. My team and I will manifest our individual leadership talents in making sure that we grow Cross River State better. Therefore, we continue to sustain all infrastructures, renew aging ones, and build new ones.
The night reaches its most electrifying moment when Governor Otu approaches the towering Christmas tree at the center of the park.
As I do this, in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Ladies and gentlemen, the light is off!
The lighting officially launches 32 days of carnival activities, a celebration of culture, music, dance, and creativity that continues to position Calabar as Africa's tourism heartbeat.
Time now for some business news with Will Ibo.
Thank you, Ayotunde. Nigeria's Debt Management Office, DMO, has raised 709.6 billion naira at its latest Treasury bills auction, with investors heavily favoring a 364-day paper, and the shorter 91 and 182-day bills were undersubscribed. The one-year bill drew strong demand, with subscriptions of nearly 700 billion naira against an offer of 450 billion naira, leading the DMO to allot 636.5 billion naira, almost 90% of total proceeds. The 364-day paper, the stop rate climbed to 17.5%, up from 16.04% at the latest auction. Rates on the shorter tenors held steady at 15.3% and 15.5% each. And the Chief Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives Company, FDC, Mr. Bismarck Rwanda, says despite the 19.42% growth recorded in Nigeria's oil and gas sector for the third quarter, as captured in the report, the industry's growth number is massive when compared with its performance last year. Speaking on our Business Morning program earlier today, Mr. Rwanda also pointed out the factors that contributed to the stellar performance of the country's most critical sector.
19.42 growth in Q3 for refining. What was it the corresponding period last year? It was minus 30. So when you add the two together, the petroleum refining actually grew by 50%. That is huge. Not only did it grow by 50%, it was consistent. That is from that point last year to now, there have been at least 9 different price reductions by the Dangote refinery, right? So we had a sector that was in the doldrums. In other words, we had 4 refineries that were not working and some modular refineries that were finding their feet. Now, all those are back. So when you compare the production and the growth this year compared to what it was at this time last year, it's actually 50% growth, and that is massive. Major driver is that the Dangote refinery kicked into action. 2, because of that, the Nigerian NNPC refineries also woke up, and the modular refineries also woke up. So when you take the aggregate, you find that the sector actually grew massively.
And let's check in with domestic equities market. You see the NGX continued in positive territory for a third straight day. Ladi Williams brings us the highlights of today's trading session.
Welcome to the stock market report. So investors are still quite bullish in this first trading week of December. And after regaining the 145,000 level, and we see a lot of stocks getting attention today. The likes of GT Code there, Zenith Bank, Financial Services, then Ila Lakes also on that counter there with trades about 11 million. So these are the top trades for today. Then we see at intraday, trading the all share index was still, looking for direction, but with attention to, stocks like GTCO, Wando, Nigeria Breweries. But this week is still looking positive, at this point, still over 1%.
Thank you, Ladi. Let's see the closing performance of other major global equities now. And that's business news. I am Will Iban. It's back to Ayotunde for the rest of the news at 10.
Thank you so much, Will. Leaders of the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda have signed a peace deal alongside U.S. President Donald Trump in Washington, bringing an end to a decades-long conflict. DR Congo's President Felix Tshisekedi and Rwanda's Paul Kagame praised the deal, describing President Trump as an even-handed leader who is never taking sides. The deal seeks to establish a permanent ceasefire, the disarmament of rebel groups, provisions for refugees to return home, and a new framework for economic prosperity. Islam appears with more international news and around the world in 5 from our London studio.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Russian President Vladimir Putin has arrived for a 2-day visit to India, where he was embraced by Prime Minister Narendra Modi ahead of an annual summit held by both countries. Delhi and Moscow are expected to sign a number of deals during the visit, which comes months after the US president increased pressure on India to stop buying Russian oil. It also comes as US President Donald Trump's administration holds a series of talks with Russia and Ukraine in an attempt to end the war. India and Russia have been close allies for decades, and Mr. Putin and Mr. Modi share a warm relationship. Meanwhile, the final report into the death of Dawn Sturges, who was poisoned by the nerve agent Novichok in Salisbury in 2018, said that the Russian President Vladimir Putin was morally responsible for her death. In late 2024, an inquiry heard 6 weeks of public evidence about links between her death and the attempted murder of the former Russian double agent Sergei Skripal, and these open hearings were followed by private sessions in January 2025, during which highly classified information from the UK security services was presented. Democrats on the House Oversight Committee have released never-before-seen images of Jeffrey Epstein's infamous island. The photographs and video appear to show several bedrooms in the US Virgin Islands home, as well as a room with masks on a wall and a phone with names written on speed dial buttons. In a statement, the committee's Democratic leader, Robert Garcia, said they collectively form a disturbing look into Epstein's world and are being released to ensure public transparency. It's after President Donald Trump signed a bill that ordered the release of government files on the late convicted sex offender, a significant turning point in a months-long fight over the documents. Authorities in Hong Kong have ordered the removal of scaffolding mesh from the buildings undergoing renovations by Saturday, as investigations continue into the Chinese territory's deadliest blaze in decades. It is now known that 159 people died as a result of the fire last Wednesday at the Wong Fuk Court housing complex, with 31 still missing. Meta has started removing Australian children under 16 years old from its Instagram, Facebook and Threads platforms a week before an official teen social media ban begins. The tech giant announced last month it had begun notifying users aged between 13 to 15 years old that their accounts would start to be shut down from the 4th of December. An estimated 150,000 Facebook users and 350,000 Instagram accounts are expected to be affected. The White House has unveiled its 2025 Christmas decorations, which are traditionally coordinated by the First Lady. This year's theme is Home is Where the Heart Is. It took 1,500 volunteers working for 1 week to install the decorations. According to the White House, more than 50 Christmas trees, 700 feet of garland, 25,000 feet of ribbon, and 10,000 butterflies fill the halls. And a bar owner in Richmond in New Zealand has said she was shocked to find a baby seal had entered her bar. Bella Evans assumed the visitor was a dog before she took a closer look. After luring the seal out of its hiding place using a salmon pizza topping, the animal was safely returned to the wild.
So this is our dog wall here, so every single dog that comes into the pub gets a photo up there, but it seems like we're going to have to put Fern the seal on there now.
And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Many thanks, Simon. And one more story just before we head to sports news. The Nasarawa State Governor Abdullahi Sule has pledged to revitalize the basic education sector. He made the pledge during the state's first Universal Basic Education Summit held in Lafia, the state capital. Our correspondent Halima Gayam reports.
Bringing the total to 30,000 tables.
The Nasarawa State government is hosting education stakeholders and students from the state and beyond for its first ever Universal Basic Education Summit to adopt ways to revitalize basic education. Speaking on the topic, basic education in Nasarawa State, yesterday, today and tomorrow, the guest speaker, Professor Tony Iradia, highlights the gaps and areas the government must improve upon to achieve success.
When we say adult learning, we are talking about adults who missed education when they were young. It is still basic education for them. And then we're also talking about nomadic education. All these forms of education are basic. And except you understand at this level of basic education, you cannot build on it. You have to have basic education as the provider and starting point of education.
The chairman of the State Universal Basic Education Board notes a number of challenges in the sector, which has prompted the need to organize the summit, and enumerates efforts to bolster the sector as the state works towards ensuring that every child goes to school.
We discover about 3,000 professional and trained teachers who work their posting illegally to local government education offices across the state. Your Excellency, we have deployed 1,900 back to the classroom and are working to redeploy 1,000 more.
Governor Abdullahi Sule pledges his support towards achieving the set revitalization.
Have we achieved all the results? Definitely not. Are we going to be achieve 100% of the result by the time some of us leave? Most likely not. But are we going to put a lot of efforts in order to ensure that we make significant progress? Yes. And that's exactly what we are doing. And so whatever amount of time we can give to education is worth it.
The shortage of qualified teachers, overstaffing in local government education offices, and vandalism of school furniture, among other issues, have been identified as some of the challenges in the sector. So the governor has approved the recruitment of 1,000 teachers and promised more investment in education. Halima Agayam, Channels Television News.
Welcome to Sports News. Nigeria Super Eagles captain William Troost-Ekong has announced his retirement from international football, bringing an end to a distinguished decade with the Super Eagles just weeks before the Africa Cup of Nations kicks off in Morocco. The 31-year-old confirmed in an emotional statement earlier today that the 2026 FIFA World Cup playoff was his last for the national team. Part of his statement reads, "Today, I am announcing my retirement from international football. The last decade has been filled with commitment, pride, and unforgettable memories. Wearing the Super Eagles shirt has been more than playing football. It's been a duty, a privilege, and an honor." He has 83 caps for Nigeria, 3 medals, and played in 5 major tournaments. The 2026 FIFA World Cup trophy is gone on display at the iconic Washington, D.C. landmark ahead of the draw on Friday. FIFA legend and former England captain Rio Ferdinand will conduct the unprecedented 48-team draw alongside award-winning broadcaster Samantha Johnson. An extraordinary selection of draw assistants that includes Tom Brady, Aaron Judge, and Shaquille O'Neal will be on stage in a remarkable crossover of global sporting talent.
I was fortunate enough to play the game at the highest level, represented my country in the World Cup. And I never ever actually imagined being in the position I am in today, where a couple of days out from being one of the hosts at the FIFA World Cup draw, which is just, for me, from where I'm from, a wild dream. And to be fulfilling that here alongside the guys here who spent numerous years really getting to this point, loads of hard work, and even coming here today in the last couple of days and being in a hotel, being in this environment, just seeing the amount of work that goes into just this part, let alone all the other aspects that happen and the elements of creating a World Cup. So that just fills me with pride, 100%. And I really want to do a good job and really want to do the job the justice it deserves, because it's a huge moment.
Finally, 7-time Olympian Olufunke Osunake has made history as the first Nigerian appointed to the International Olympic Committee Athletes Commission, following her nomination by IOC President Kirsty Coventry. Osunake, one of Africa's most decorated table tennis players, is amongst 5 new members appointed to ensure the commission reaches full composition ahead of the Milano Cortina 2026 Olympic Winter Games. Osunake competed in 7 consecutive Olympic Games from Atlanta 1996 to Tokyo 2020. That's it on Sports News. It's back to Aya for the conclusion of the news at 10.
And the main news again. President Bola Tinubu today swore in General Christopher Musa as new Minister of Defense, as the minister assured Nigerians of improved security very soon. Defense headquarters said it's still investigating allegations of troops withdrawal before the attack on the government comprehensive girls secondary school, MAGA, in Kebbi State. The federal government has pledged support for Imo's multi-million-dollar investment drive as the state hosted the 2025 Economic Summit in Owerri. And the leaders of the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda have signed a peace agreement alongside U.S. President Donald Trump in Washington. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ayotunde Balogun, and do have a good night.